Facebook Live, and Twitch. This is the Fifth Chapter with Dennis Fithian and Brian Chapman.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, but people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state when that light turns red. So don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman, Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter.
That's right. Welcome to the Fifth Chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian, getting ready for episode number 29 of the Fifth Chapter. And even though it's not one of our chapters today, the big news in the sporting world today is the big upset in the NBA bubble, Dennis.
Yeah, how about that? Watching, it was the one series I looked at that I thought would be a sweep and there wouldn't be any interest, and there you go, the Magic coming up, ringing the bell with a bubble right out of the gate. It's pretty awesome. They were up all game, and they really, man, they boat raced them. How about the Bucks getting boat raced in game one?
Yeah, it was especially shocking considering last year when we saw the Pistons make the playoffs against the Bucks. Obviously, the Pistons' best player, Blake Griffin, was playing at well under 100%, but they didn't come close to covering the spread. They got blown out in all 4 games of that series. So to see them not only take the lead early, but not allow the Bucks to come back every single time it looked like the Bucks were making a run, they couldn't get closer than 7 or 8 points. That was astounding. So this bubble is already providing some fun drama for basketball fans. And actually, I forget who it was, but I think it might have been Rod Beard of the Detroit News, who said while watching the games yesterday that with the game starting at 1 o'clock, back to back to back to back, it's like watching the NCAA tournament.
Well, yeah, except it's during the pandemic and you can't go to Buffalo Wild Wings to watch the games, and there's no brackets. And, yeah, but I get what he meant. I felt like that a little bit to me too. It's pretty sweet to be able to throw on games in the afternoon and playoff games now. There's just hockey games rolling, basketball games. It's pretty sweet.
Absolutely. We'll definitely want to thank everyone who's watching episode 29. We've got 5 fantastic chapters for everyone watching on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. Also, want to thank those listening. That's right, we're on Twitch. Want to thank those listening via the podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. If you want to hear our podcast of the show, you can do so. The podcast is available just before midnight on the day of each show. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and participate in each show by sending your comments in via Twitch, via Facebook Live, or via YouTube. Dennis will be reading your comments throughout the show. Let's take a look at today's book. In the second chapter, the same old Lions don't have the same old slogan for this year. They're going to be using the term Dagger Time. We'll tell you what that means and if that could be effective. In the third chapter, Big Ten players and Big Ten parents are not letting this football season go down without a fight, especially now that there's a new coronavirus test. Details on that in the third chapter. In the fourth chapter, this is something that Dennis previewed on Thursday, with the success of the NBA bubble, could we see an NCAA basketball bubble? And in the fifth chapter, one of Dennis's absolute favorite games, man, woman, or child. Man, woman, or child. So, Dennis, I know that you did not win, you definitely did not win last time. You've got 5 opportunities to get 3 right for this time. But Dennis, will start off with the first chapter, and that takes us to the sorry Detroit Tigers. I said on Thursday's show that by Sunday afternoon, the Tigers would have a losing record, and that was because they were playing the Cleveland Indians. I was right. They got swept by the Indians to drop to 9-10. Then they lost yesterday to the White Sox to drop to 9-11. To make things worse, the injury bug was chomping down on them. C.J. Cron went from being on the IL to being out for the season. He's having season-ending knee ligament surgery. Ivan Nova hasn't been any good, and the Tigers placed him on the IL after his sorry start on Saturday. So that created 2 openings on the 40-man roster, and it created another opening in the rotation. And another opening in the rotation was created when they moved Tyler Alexander from starter to Michael Fulmer's piggybacker. So what did the Tigers do with those two roster spots? Well, they made a pretty significant announcement via social media yesterday, and here is what they told to their fan base. And for those of you who are listening via the podcast and couldn't see that, it was a 15-second hype video announcing the introduction of Casey Mize, Tarik Skubal, and Isaac Paredes to the major leagues on back-to-back-to-back days this week. The Tigers fan base gets to see 3 of the top 6 prospects in the organization. Yesterday, it was the MLB debut of Isaac Paredes, who was the starting third baseman. He had a bloop single to drive in the team's only 2 runs. He also had a throwing error. Tonight, it's the number 5 prospect in the Tigers organization, Tarik Skubal, who had a monster year in Double-A last year and was a strikeout artist. His first batter of his Major League Baseball career was, what's that? You got a buddy in the room, Dennis?
It's my dog, Louie.
Oh, hey, Louie. Doesn't sound like Louie's a big Tarik Skubal fan. And who would be after his first batter? Tim Anderson hit a solo home run. And but he was a ninth round pick in 2018. He actually beats Casey Mize to the majors, who was the first overall pick in that same draft, and he makes his MLB debut tomorrow. 3 guys being brought up to spark a team that's lost 6 in a row and lacks talent. Dennis and Louie, what do you think about Al Avila's decision to promote Paredes, Skubal, and Mize this week?
Yeah, I'll start barking too, just like Louie here. I watched the Tigers play the Indians, and it's crazy just what the effect Ohio, like with what Ohio State's doing to Michigan, and then 20 in a row by the Indians. And, I can remember back in 2013, I think around 2013, I went over to the opposing manager's office, and Terry Francona was sitting in there, and I said, "Hey, can I do a quick interview?" He said, "Yeah, go ahead, sit down." And, he just took over. He said, "Man, I'm telling my team to go out there," because the Tigers had won the Central 4 times in a row. Up to, I guess, 2014 they won, and it was 4 in a row. And he said, "I tell my guys to look over there, and every single day, these are the guys that we have to get after. We have to do everything. This is the team to beat." And, they do all of those like they have one of the lowest payrolls, and they do a great job drafting. And Francona preaches all the things like all the defensive run save stuff, 90 feet and all that. They always rank up high in that, and it's just they're a sound baseball team. And the Tigers, man, they could really take some notes, from the Indians on that. But it was such a depressing week at it. And then watch them fall under 500. I'll tell you that if they didn't make an announcement, at least bringing up Mize, man, I think people would have headed down to Comerica Park and maybe lit it on fire. I mean, that's how upset I think the Tiger fans were getting. But yeah, that was some good news to see the 3 top 100 prospects. Skubal's the most interesting one because he was a 9th round pick. But you look back, you had to look to get a top 100 prospect debut, and you had to go back to 16 to see Michael Fulmer. Before that, it was Robbie Ray in 14. Before that, Nick Castellanos in 2013. And we get all 3 in 3 straight days. So that just shows you, like, wow, what's going on here. Pretty exciting stuff. And, Skubal's a top 50 guy right now, and Mize is a top 10 guy. So today and tomorrow, pretty exciting. But you're right. You settle in to watch the game, man, and Anderson just blows one out of there quick. It's like, woo, welcome to the majors.
Yeah, I think Paredes is just outside the top 100, but that's an amazing and also
Close
an embarrassing.
enough.
Yeah, he's close enough. But that's an amazing and also an embarrassing stat that you just mentioned right there about not having a single top 100 prospect make a major league debut since 2016. Not 19, not 18, not 2017, since 2016. And that shows you just how starved the Tigers fan base has been for some young talent, whether it's homegrown talent or some talent coming in via trade, because Al Avila's been making all these trades with opposing teams. The problem is when he trades players away like J.D. Martinez or Shane Green or Ian Kinsler or Justin Upton or Justin Verlander. He's not getting top 100 prospects in return. And the one time he did, he got Franklin Perez, and Franklin Perez decided to get hurt for like 2-3 straight years. But that's another story. Just in terms of what's going on right now, though, it's obviously too little, too late if they want to make the playoffs. If they wanted to make the playoffs and they thought these guys could help them, you don't wait until you have a 6-game losing streak to destroy the season when you already don't have much talent, and particularly with the 2 starting pitchers, you knew the rotation was trash before you brought them up. But this is just these 3 days, seeing these 3 players make their debuts. This is the most excited I've been about the Tigers in years. And the fact that it's just not one prospect, it's half of their top 6, including a former number 1 overall pick who we've been wanting to see for all season. It's even though we know this is going to be a bad year, the Tigers still have a good shot to get the number 1 pick, assuming they combine the 2019 with 20 records to do the draft order. There's excitement about what's going to be for the future. I mean, I'm least excited about Isaac Paredes. He was an Al Avila trade acquisition, and none of them have turned out well. But Paredes had a decent year last year in Double-A as a 20-year-old. And now he's already at the MLB level as a 21-year-old. That's promising. And so why not throw him in there at third base? It's a position where nobody's taken hold of it. Dawel Lugo, a previous Al Avila acquisition, was DFA'd. Not just sent back down to the minors. He was DFA'd. Jeimer Candelario wasn't all that great at third base. Torkelson is trying to be a third baseman in Toledo. If Paredes can handle third baseman as an offensive player and defensively, then they can move Torkelson back to first base. And I'm very excited about Skubal, even though he was terrible in that first inning. I didn't think he would debut this year because he got the Rona and didn't join summer camp until late, but he must have been tearing it up in Toledo to make his debut before Casey Mize. And he had a great year last year, 179 strikeouts in 122 and 2/3 innings pitched. So he might be the second best starting pitcher in the organization, assuming he improves after his first inning. And then Mize, obviously I'm really excited to see him pitch tomorrow. I want to see how great that splitter is against major league competition. And see how his major league debut will go, especially after what happened in his Double-A debut, a complete game shutout and a no-hitter.
Yeah, well, don't forget. I mean, I have to correct you. You said there was no prospects there that Al traded for. Jeimer Candelario's over there at first base. You forgot to mention. I know. Yeah. I know you don't like Jeimer there. I don't think Dawel Lugo had any options left. I think that's why they had to DFA him.
Oh, that's fine with everybody, isn't it?
Yeah. You want some of the feedback right now on the Tigers?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Tim C. on Facebook likes the chapters tonight. Looking forward to it. He says, yeah, the new kid struggled in his debut on the mound already. And he said the Tigers are looking terrible right now. Tonight, sloppy and no energy. Nobody chasing down the ball. Everybody's getting hits off the new kid. I'm a little disappointed right now after the hype. And then,
and before you get to the next one, let me just mention that it is 1-1 right now in the bottom of the second. Jonathan Scope hit a home run, and there's one out with a man on first and second for the White Sox. And Tim Anderson's at the plate.
Here's Sideshow Raj joining up here, saying, "What's up, Louis the 13th?" Who's now back in the production studio here. Matt is showing up here on YouTube as well, saying, hey, boys. What's up, Matt? And here's Keith. Keith is always there. Always, you're going to see Keith on YouTube. He says all 3 of those players could have been up a week ago at least. 20 in a row is impossible. When will that happen again? Oh, I know. Cleveland will win 20 more against the Tigers. I get it, Keith. I mean, it's not that bad, but I get what you're saying.
Well, I mean, based on how things have gone, based on how bad this season is, and based on how they have to play the Indians as soon as this weekend once again, who would be shocked? So, and think about this. If you got Skubal pitching today and you got Mize pitching tomorrow, then that would mean you got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you're not going to have Skubal or Mize pitch. And then Sunday, Skubal will get an opportunity to face the Indians, but Mize won't. So if you assume that all the Tigers' starting pitchers are terrible, and I believe it's going to be, Fulmer pitching on Friday against the Indians, and Mize pitching on, Boyd pitching on Saturday. Those are 2 losses. And then you got Skubal in his second career start going up against a team that will have potentially at that point beaten the Tigers 22 games in a row. Yikes.
Hey, well, hopefully if the Tigers are down 7 runs or something and there's a 3-0 count on the White Sox or Indians, maybe they'll just take a pitch, not hit one out.
That's so ridiculous. He hit a grand slam. Blame the pitcher. And for those of you wondering, Fernando Tatis hit a home run, a grand slam on a 3-0 pitch, and I forget who the opponent was, but they were criticizing him for swinging. Texas. Yeah, they're criticizing him for swinging at the pitch. Some of these baseball unwritten rules are ridiculous. If you don't want someone stealing on you in a 9-0 game, then throw him out or hold him at first base. If you don't want someone hitting a grand slam, then don't load the bases, and if you do, don't feed him a meatball. You can't just sit there and say, we're allowed to throw a strike. And if you don't want someone bunting during a perfect game, then bring your third baseman in so that you have to get a hit. I mean, it's just ridiculous. If a team tries to win, then you're going to criticize them. Baseball is the one game where there's no clock. That's one of the things I like about it. You can't just milk the clock. Therefore, Tatis had to give his team as many runs as possible. If the Rangers didn't want him to hit a grand slam and they wanted to just quit, they should have walked off the field. But that didn't happen.
No, and you know what? If in baseball, I would criticize a player if I don't see him, and I've done this in the past with Victor Martinez, and I've done it with Miguel Cabrera when it doesn't look like they're hustling down the first base. I criticize them. And you know what? I don't care if the game's 10-0. I don't care if it's 3-2. Hustle down the first base. And so I'm not going to criticize Fernando Tatis. By the way, one of the most exciting players in all of baseball. Mm-hmm. And I don't collect a lot of baseball cards, but a friend of mine does. And over the last 5 years, he's given me, I think, 3 cards. One was Isaac Paredes, but one was Juan Soto. And I adopted the Nationals last year after the Tigers were so bad, and that worked out pretty good. Although, it really didn't create as much excitement for me as I thought. Well, the other card was, there it is. Take a look.
Fernando Tatis Jr.
That's it.
Yep.
So I've been pulling. The guy's a hell of a player.
Well, speaking of him, that's the one thing that the Tigers organization doesn't have right now at the major league level. They brought up 2 of their fireballer, or their 2 premium arms. The only other premium arm they have left to bring up would be Matt Manning. And we've been waiting for these guys to come up for a while. Isaac Paredes, I mean, he's not a top 100 prospect. He's a 6th best in the Tiger system, but not a top 100 prospect. And nobody around baseball is talking about him. But they don't have a guy who just got to the majors who's on par with Fernando Tatis. Maybe in a year or two when Torkelson and or Green get there, or if somebody else emerges, then we'll have somebody like that to talk about. But there is no Tatis. There is no Vlad Guerrero Jr. There is no Juan Soto. There is no nobody like that. A Luis Robert or Eloy Jimenez. Think about what the White Sox are right now with Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, all these exciting Moncado, all these exciting hitters in their lineup. When you look at the Tigers, they've got Dawa Lugo, who they got rid of, Jamer Candelario.
Come on.
Hey, look, those were the previous, or he was the previous prospect that folks were kind of talking about. Jamer Candelario has been a little bit better, but he's no Tatis. Stewart has been better than I thought, but still not any good. Grayson Griner, Jake Rogers can't even beat out Grayson Griner for a spot to get promoted at any point this season. The Tigers need a bat like that, and it looks right now they might have to wait until perhaps 2022 for that kind of excitement from that position.
Yeah, here's Greg on Twitch. It's kind of a good news, bad news feedback chat, because he says,
"Oh gosh,
Tigers losing, bad news, good news." Though he's watching the show, so he puts a couple smiling emojis there.
The reason that he's saying that is because the score is now 4-1 White Sox over the Tigers, and I'm trying to see what exactly happened. Here we go. In the second inning, it was I mentioned Tim Anderson up with a man on first and second. He had an RBI double. And then Yoan Moncada, who we just mentioned, had a sacrifice fly to drive in Mendick. And then Jose Abreu hit an RBI single. So if you're keeping track out there, Tarik Skubal, 2 innings, 4 runs, all earned, 7 hits. And he was a strikeout artist in the minors, over 170 strikeouts in 122 and 2/3 innings last year. This year in 2 innings, he's got 1 strikeout. So his major league debut is probably over because he's got 52 pitches, and we can classify it as a disaster. The game's not over, but the leading candidate for the bony finger of blame is Tarik Skubal.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that FSD got his dad up there in the second inning, because if they would have waited to the third inning, you would have been talking with his kid already in the shower. So they made a good move there. Maybe tomorrow they want to get Mize's parents in there in the first inning in case things go bad. But look, there's going to be ups and downs with you know, even your prize guys. I wasn't expecting Fernando Venezuela, coming in there.
Well, and this is what you want to see, whether there's going to be ups and downs or he's going to take off right away, because if there's going to be ups and downs, then you know that there's a question mark going into your rotation at one spot. But if this is his only bad start, or with Mize tomorrow, if he takes off, then you know going into next year that you've got that spot locked up. If these two can lock up spots by the end of the season in next year's rotation, perhaps that accelerates your rebuild, and that changes what Al Avila wants to do with the Jordan Zimmerman money coming off the books going into next year. But you have to see what you got, and so far, oof. Can't wait to see him against the Tribe. Are you ready to turn the page to the second chapter?
Let's do it. We'll throw a dagger in there, and it's chap, you're too young to remember, but back in the early days of hip hop, there was an artist that came out named MC Hammer.
Oh yeah,
out of the Bay Area. And he had parachute
Can't
pants,
touch this.
and he had Hammer Time. And that might be the last time that the Tigers had won a playoff game. I'd have to
Lions.
see if it just, or what did I just say, Tiger? Yeah, but Lions. I have to see if it matches up or not. But yeah, Hammer Time and Dagger Time. That's what I'm thinking about. But the Lions have that motto, and also they are thinking about locking up their wide receiver Kenny Galladay before the season starts in less than a month here. What do you think of the new motto, and what do you think about a new deal for Kenny G?
Well, the new motto, and I'll put up an article from the Detroit News with a T.J. Hawkinson quote. It's about putting the dagger. What's that?
Is this a pay article?
No, it's free. It's free, so you can see it. Yeah, the Detroit News and Free Press in the last week are saying if you want to see some of our articles, you better pay for it. But the Lions want to focus their attention at the end of games and putting the dagger in their opponents. And T.J. Hawkinson spoke to the fake news media after Monday's practice and said, quote, "It's something that we came up with in a team meeting. Everyone says finish, but I think we wanted to change it up. We've heard that throughout growing up is finish, finish, finish. We kind of wanted to put our own little spin on it. It was something Stafford came up with. I think we're all just trying to buy into it. Dagger time, red zone, finishing. It's the name of the game. It's just the things we want to improve. It's just a little spin that us as an offense and team, we have adapted." So I look at the Dagger Time motto, and I'm okay with it. I think it's a good idea. I don't think that just the name itself and putting a label on it is going to fix everything. But I think that if this mentality can motivate them to finish off games, that's fine. If they're up by 3 points in the fourth quarter and they score a touchdown with 5 minutes to go, I think that all the fans are going to be saying Dagger Time, and they'll be pretending to hold the dagger. They'll have knife emojis on social media. I think that'll be cool for Lions fans. They did struggle down the stretch of some games last year, and I think that Perhaps some of it was the mentality. Maybe some of it wasn't the mentality. And mentality is not going to fix everything. If the coach calls a bad play, like it's 3rd and 8, and they have a draw when they're up by 6 points with 7 minutes to go, that's not putting the dagger on an opponent. If you're just trying to get 2 yards closer for a 57 as opposed to a 59-yard Matt Prater field goal, that's not a dagger time mentality. If the coach puts Kenny Golladay on the bench so they can have a 3 tight end set on 3rd and 4, that's not likely to be dagger time. That's grabbing the udder and milking the clock time. But players obviously are not going to be able to control the play call or who's on the field. They can control the mentality they have about, hey, it's not about let's not screw it up. It's about making the big play to finish. It's about putting the dagger in the opponent. It's like finish him when it comes to Mortal Kombat. At the end of the game, the guy's just sitting there like this, and then you get to do a special move like putting a spear through his throat or freezing him and doing an uppercut, something like that. That's what the Lions have to do with dagger time. So I think that it's okay to have a nice little talking point like this. I think that the fans will latch onto it. And if they fail to stick the dagger in their opponent, then folks will be saying SOL as opposed to dagger time.
Yeah, that's right. And there's nothing wrong with mottos there, especially if they're not like for the Lions, talking about we're going to win it all or, Super Bowl or bust or something like that. Like that would be stupid. But, dagger time. And it does point to something that they had a problem with. And what all teams, are trying to do is when they get a chance, make sure you step on the neck or stick that dagger in there. So I'm good with that. But you're right. We've seen a lot of mottos in the past. Another one bites the dust or whatever it is. And we've seen it go by the wayside. And, with the Lions, a motto that you could use and you like could quickly turn against them and make them a laughingstock, as we've seen before. But you know what? Hopefully that's not going to be the case for him this year. As far as Kenny Golladay here, you know what? You look at the top wide receivers in the NFL, and you think he's Julio Jones, no. I mean, you think he's DeAndre Hopkins, no. He's not. When you start getting into those, top 3 or 4 or 5 guys, you're like,
Thielen, no.
Well, I don't know. I think he's on par with a Thielen, and that's why I think when you look, you could make a case for him. He's in the top 10 wide receivers in the NFL. So that's where he's going to get close to, $18 to $20 million per year. That's what they have to pay him. If, sure, I'd like to say, hey, he only deserves 15 or 16, and you can make a case for that, but that's not the way contracts work in the NFL. If I'm looking at it objectively, and I see that he's a top 10 guy, and he's up, then it's a pretty easy deal when you come down and you're his agent. They're going to be looking for around $18 million a year, and it's not going to be drastically less than that. And, that's about where it's going to come in. So that's what I expect, and I think that's what the Lions should do.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him a top 10 wide receiver when in his best year, which was last year, he had to back into the Pro Bowl. I think they probably get, about 5 or 6 receivers for each conference, so that would put 10 or 12 that are getting in without having to back in. But he's just outside of it, and I think that it makes sense for them to try to give him an extension now because he has been steadily improving from year to year, and there's a chance that he could crack into that top 10. So what you don't want to do is wait until after the season when perhaps he's the number 7 receiver in the NFL, and you have to pay him based on being the top, the 7th best receiver. If he's the 10th or 11th best, then pay him at that level, and you can get yourself a little bit of a bargain. I don't want to see the Detroit Lions go out and give him top wide receiver in the league money, $22-23 million a year. We see that with quarterbacks. The next one up is oftentimes getting the most amount in NFL history, which is a joke. Kenny Golladay is not that. He's not even a household name in the NFL at this point. It's not just because he wears the Honolulu blue and silver. But if they can give him, top 10 money right now without giving him top 5 money, I think that would be fair, and it could end up being a bargain in the future. But calling him a top 10 receiver right now, I think it's premature because he has not earned that title yet.
Who had the most touchdown receptions last year in the NFC?
I think it was Kenny Golladay. And
yeah,
he will help them for dagger time.
Get a little, your point of like maybe you get a little bit of a deal now, So maybe he will come in at $16 million. And, you see that. It's amazing to call that a bargain, but it would be a bargain for the Lions. And you'd feel good about that if it's, but I would expect 16, 17, or 18 for Kenny Galladay.
Yeah, I'd still like to see him fight more for jump balls, things like that, be more competitive in one-on-one and certainly double coverage. But he's certainly a very good wide receiver that I figure Lions fans want to keep around for a long period of time. And if he's okay being a Detroit Lion, if he's talking about having an extension, then it doesn't sound like he's one of those typical Detroit Lions that hates playing for Matt Patricia. Now maybe he does, but he's willing to stomach that because he's going to get a big pay raise right now. But if he wants to stay, then good for him and good for the Lions. Yeah,
it just reminds me, I was reading some of those Calvin Johnson quotes, and they sound like the same quotes for the last couple of years. Hey, what about the organization? Nah, nothing. That's pretty much what he had to say. We do have some feedback coming in on Kenny Galladay. Keith likes Kenny Galladay. One of the good picks for the worst GM in all of sports, he says. You sure that's Keith, or is that Brian? No, actually, it is Keith.
No, not me.
I was going to see if I could just toggle back and forth to Twitch, but no, I got to pick a different button here. I'm working it. Let's see where we're at with Facebook, see if there's any more coming in.
Well, while you're looking at that, I just want to mention one other thing about Dagger Time. And Dagger Time also needs to be a mentality for the defense, because in that Detroit News article that I mentioned, it said that the Lions give up 9.3 points per fourth quarter. So you're talking about giving up, if you extrapolate that over a game, that's about 37 points per game based on their trend in the fourth quarter. If they add a Dagger Time touchdown in the fourth quarter of a tie game, but the defense gives up 9 or 10 points because that's what the average, then the Lions are going to lose the game. What's the point of solving Dagger Time on offense if the defense still stinks? Based on the offseason, the Lions' defensive game plan and their defensive Dagger Time is, let's get rid of the best player, let's sign some more expatriates, let's not boost the pass rush, and we can assume they're probably not going to blitz a whole lot more, although they do have a new defensive coordinator. The Dagger Time is not going to mean much offensively if the defense is still a joke.
True enough. Greg weighing in on Twitch saying TJ Hawkinson had off-season surgery on his ankle. That makes me nervous. Mm-hmm. It could take one hit and he can get hurt again. Once again, the Lions draft pick sucks. Yeah, well, I mean, if he went down with another injury, you would feel like that. That's for sure. When it came to Hawk, I wish they wouldn't have picked him in the top 10. That puts a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah.
He had the great first game, and then if he did not have that great first game, people would already being like, yeah, we know we got to be patient with the guy, but we'd like to see a little bit of something. So we just saw the one flash in one game, but expecting a lot more from TJ Hawkinson, that's for sure this year.
All right, Dennis, let's turn the page to the third chapter, and that takes us to the Big Ten as they continue to deal with the consequences of being the first major conference to postpone its college football season. The Pac-12, of course, joined shortly thereafter, but the Big 12, ACC, and SEC at the moment are trudging forward with the college football season. In the aftermath of the Big Ten postponing the season until the spring, Commissioner Kevin Warren has come under a lot of fire for postponing it so early. The Big Ten coaches have spoken out about postponing the season. Deep South Buckeyes quarterback Justin Fields is spearheading a movement to try to get the Big Ten to reverse their decision. He's got over 250,000 signatures on a petition to get them to reverse. The parents of the players on Ohio State, We Are Penn State, Nebraska, and Iowa have demanded answers from the Big Ten about why the season was canceled. And there are two other very significant updates. The first comes from the medical community, and I want to share with you a Twitter thread coming from Andy Slavitt, who's a former White House health official, but it's about Saliva Direct, which is a coronavirus test that just received FDA approval on Saturday. And as you can see, He mentioned that it got approval on that morning, which is Saturday. And if you scroll down in his Twitter thread, he gives a whole bunch of reasons for why it's exciting. Reason one, saliva. It's a saliva test. You don't have to stick one of those swabs deep inside your nose to scramble your brain. The second reason, he says, is profit or lack thereof. And that's because, as you see down here, the cost of the materials is about $4. And I think he later mentioned that, right here, a test is probably going to cost about $10, but the current tests are about $100. So if it's 25 times cheaper, then it could be a heck of a lot easier to test not only athletes, but obviously the entire population. If it's cheap, he also mentions that you could test people a lot more frequently. At $10 a test, you can test every day or every couple of days. This is even more important than accuracy, but his fourth point is the accuracy. Official data shows 88 to 94% accuracy. If you assume 90% accuracy, which is the best of any saliva test, you could test twice for $20 and be at 99% accuracy. And he also mentioned that with the saliva test, you get a quicker turnaround than with the nasal swab test because those can take 48 hours. But with the saliva test, you can get the results back in a matter of hours, if not by the next day. So that was one update. And then the other update actually came from not one, but two university officials about the vote that took place to get rid of the college football season this fall. And here's an article from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and it quotes Sandy Barber, who is the president of Penn State University. And when she was asked about the vote, she said, "Nobody's ever told me there was, so I just don't know whether there was actually a vote by the chancellors and presidents." And then later on in the article, it says, University of Minnesota President Joan Gable said last week that she wouldn't call it a vote per se. So was there a vote? Was there not a vote? Was there a dictator that just said anybody that goes against me is going to be removed from their position as president because I, Kevin Warren, am canceling the season? Dennis, what do you think about all these updates and this big movement to bring football back to the Big Ten?
Well, all these people are supposed to be on the same page, and even if they aren't, when they're sitting together there and they figure out that this is what they're going to do at the end, they should all act like they are on the same team and speak as one. This was an example of exactly not how to do something when it comes to a conference that's supposed to be the leaders and supposed to be one of the best. And certainly they have a lot of smart people, but they keep dropping the ball everywhere you look. I go back to last week when they put out that farcical schedule. And they had 10 games, and they had 2 cross opponents. And they said they were going to start on the September 5th. Like, everybody knew that was trash, and alarm bells were ringing right off the bat. It's like, what is this? But just 5 days later, they're over there on a Monday coming out and revealing that, whatever, they had an anonymous vote. It wasn't that anonymous. It was deliberative. That's what the Minnesota, whatever that means. So what were they doing? Sitting in the conference call, somebody going like this, put your hand up. That's just an embarrassment all the way through. And you know what? People just want the facts. They fed Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic as soon as the anonymous vote came out and it was public, and then Kevin Warren canceled everything. Somebody in the Big Ten office over there fed her a story about myocarditis, and there were 10 cases of this heart inflammation, which was alarming. And this is a rare condition, and that was kind of like the smoking gun, or the reason. Like, yeah, we know that the pandemic's really bad, but what else has changed? Well, that was what it seemed like had changed. They came up with this report, but there have been a ton of scientists and doctors who have refuted that. One from Michigan, right? They're all like, hey, this is not enough to do this. So what they should have done is all been on the same page. They should have all communicated with their athletic directors, whether it was the one at Penn State or Michigan, and they should have got to the coaches. So on Monday, they didn't have to stand there crying and complaining and pleading, with blood, sweat, and tears for, for their players. That was an embarrassment all the way through there. And so, Kevin Warren, I know the presidents, look, they're all acting like they hate him. they're supposed to be on the same team. They're supposed to be pulling for one another, and they didn't. They need to come out. You know what? If I'm a president and I'm sitting there at my institution and I know the reason why I don't want to have football, well, I'm going to come out and say something. If not, you've got just as many scientists and doctors in schools down south. They want to play football. They want to take the risk of doing it. And the football players up here, they want to too. So you better come out and give the details of, exactly of why you wanted to bolt and pull the plug on the season that they did right now. Everybody knows they should have just come out on Tuesday. If they had the vote or not, Kevin Warren could have easily just come out and said, look, there was an anonymous vote. It's been leaked, but this is what it is. It's 12-2, and we have 12 votes against. So it doesn't look good right now for us, but we're going to continue to practice, and we're going to continue to monitor the situation. And you know what? If something like, the saliva test comes up, well, maybe there's a chance. But, it doesn't really look like there's a chance. You know what? I heard Pat Forty yesterday say that he was talking with a number of people from campuses in the South, and he says there's no mask wearing, and everybody's getting together in large groups. That's what he's hearing. Yeah. So,
shocker.
I know that on one side, you'd like the Big Ten to have paused, and then today, Michigan State's going all online classes. Yeah. Notre Dame's doing it for 2 weeks. These are things that don't bode well.
North Carolina's all online.
I know. As soon as you say that, though, there are people that will come back and say, hey, that's good for football because the football players won't be around the general population of students. I guess they do have a point there, but shut everything down, just have the football players. And
we're going to clear everything out so we can have football.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good, but they could have done a way better job of presenting this and rolling this out than they did. And where are the presidents? Where's Kevin Warren again? Where's anybody to come out? What are they, the parents and the letters that they put in? Actually, I guess they did mail them to the Big Ten office. They demanded a video conference by tomorrow. So we'll see if they are able to get those answers.
Everybody going to transfer to the ACC? Look, I think that some of the things you're talking about are fair when it comes to the messaging. And when he was being interviewed by Dave Rebson last week about Nebraska wanting to pull out and go play somewhere else and just not addressing it, he should have just been firm and said they're not going anywhere because if they do want to play somewhere else, then they'll be out of the Big Ten and we're not going to be cutting them any $50 million checks anymore from BTN. But other than that, I don't have much criticism for Kevin Warren. What is it that these players and parents don't get? What more explanation do they need? Sitting there writing letters to the presidents and Justin Fields doing a petition and saying, well, all the idiots from down south want to play and we should be able to play too. And maybe it's because he's from Atlanta, Georgia, or he's from the state of Georgia. He was committed to Georgia. He played at Georgia for a year. So he's probably got friends that are at those SEC and ACC schools that are playing and they're saying, haha, look at you. You're a deep south Buckeye, but you can't play because your team isn't actually in the deep south. It's ridiculous.
I think it's the nature of the game, chap. What it comes down to, when you're playing football, you're risking a hell of a lot more than most people would in any particular situation. You know how devastating that head injuries and CTE can be. You know, on every single play, you could be paralyzed. You realize, all of the the different injuries when it comes down to knee injuries and everything else. I mean, it is a brutal game.
But who gets heart inflammation from football? Who? I've never heard of somebody getting heart inflammation from football, myocarditis from football, and now you got at least 10 people that have it. You got one player from Indiana who's a true freshman, so he's like 18 years old, and he got hospitalized with breathing problems from that, and it's like these parents and coaches want to ignore that, or they just choose not to hear that. That's in their conference, the Big Ten.
Yeah, I'm not going to be like...
This isn't rocket science.
I can't put my white coat on and start telling you my myocarditis, maybe because they're looking more for things, they're finding out some of these conditions. I don't know. Maybe there is a link to COVID. There's enough papers out there. If you want to go and data, if you want to look at, what they're saying at the Mayo Clinic or what this other guy was saying for Michigan. Or there've been a lot of people that are like, look, there is this condition, but this is not the reason to shut it down. So I don't know. The tough part is is that
Well,
you've
hold on a
got-
second. Why does
All right,
Kevin?
go ahead.
Why does Kevin Warren need to tell them the specific reason for why they're shutting down? It should
Well,
be
if
obvious.
not, they should let it. They should let if he doesn't want to do that, the Big Ten should immediately let these players go and search out another school and play football this fall. Then
No, but my
That's what they
point
should
is
do.
he shouldn't need to have an explanation because you look at everything else that's being shut down due to the coronavirus. It's obvious they're shutting it down because there's a deadly disease that's ravaging throughout the country. It doesn't take rocket science to figure that out. Why are they protesting? Why are they writing letters?
Well, here, except chat, like you believe that, and I actually believe that as well. But what you don't see is that you can find just as many people would sit here and say, Chapman, you're just buying into all of this fear porn. You're just buying in, like these kids will get this and they can just shake it off. And you can say that's fine, except when it's coming down to your kid. But you know what? In the South, all of those schools are trying to play. All of the high schools are trying to play.
Yeah.
And I know it's a Republican versus Democrat type thing. Like the Ohio governor today, he's a Republican. They're playing football down in high school in the Buckeye State, even though the Buckeyes aren't. So it's a crazy time. And I think when you're a parent and you've got your kid they've put everything into this and they get to this point, you might be looking like and a little bit confused as well. He's like, all right, I got everybody here telling me, this virus is terrible and I shouldn't even walk out inside. I should stay in. Meanwhile, if you're down south, everybody's like, let's party. Let's go. We're playing football. Let's tee it up.
Yeah,
So
and then
you want some more answers to that. You
Well,
want more answers.
Well, and then you see one of the southern schools at the University of North Carolina has people come back for 1 week. The student population comes back for 1 week, and they get 4 clusters of coronavirus. The student newspaper's calling it a cluster bleep, and they decide, hey, after 1 week, we can't handle students, so
Say
we're
it.
just going all on. No, I don't need to say it. It's cluster bleep. You know exactly what it is. People out there know what it is. But after 1 week, they decide they're going to shut things down. When the rest of the southern schools, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12 schools go back, and you got these students that are not putting on masks, that are not social distancing because they haven't seen each other for a long time, because there's a cute girl in a sorority that they want to bang, and then all of a sudden the coronavirus starts spreading there. Well, guess what? These chancellors and these presidents might have to make a decision. Right now, look, they don't have to make a decision because their season's not going to be starting until September 26th. But once the students come and then all of a sudden the Rona starts spreading and you got these clusters, well, then you're going to have to change gear. I will say this. The Saliva Direct thing is really exciting because it's so cheap, because you could be doing it for $10 a test. You could be doing it for two to three times per week, not just for the student athletes. Like, imagine if, I know that a lot of people are struggling financially, particularly if they lost their jobs, particularly if they were relying on the extra 600 Trump bucks per week and now Congress won't give them any money. But $30 is not a whole lot of money for a lot of people, especially if you have a regular full-time job or a couple of part-time jobs. And I think that a lot of people would be willing to take 3 $10 tests per week and get their coronavirus results back in a matter of hours. And if we could all do that over a course of a month or something like that, we could get rid of this coronavirus quickly because we would know exactly where it is, know exactly who to shut down, and people wouldn't have to go broke getting $100 or $150 tests to see if they have it. It'd be nice if they could really mass produce this test, not just for NBA players and college athletes, but for everybody.
All right, we get some feedback on this. Greg says the players want to play. The president, Kevin, I think is worrying about the presidents, and Kevin Warren, I think, are worrying about the liability. Why didn't Warner put on hold? I don't know what that means. Maybe that's Kevin Warner. Why did he put it on hold? Maybe get more information on this and just wait. Yeah, all of the things that you're saying there, Greg, are right, and what Chap's saying as well. It would have been really easy on Tuesday to just say, we've got 12-2 against. That speaks for itself. We're not shutting it down today. But, like we said all along, even when we put out that farcical schedule last week, this thing doesn't look good. They could be in the exact same spot they are today, and where would all the complaining be?
Yeah.
There wouldn't be any.
No, well, there probably still would be, but I think that the complaining, I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'll say it till I get blue in the face. The complaining from the players, the coaches, and everybody else needs to be not directed at the Big Ten commissioner or the presidents or the chancellors. They need to criticize the government for their response. all 50 governors failed to follow the White House coronavirus task force recommendations for reopening their states. And, whether it's the president, whether it's the governors, they should take some responsibility for not putting football in a position where they could safely play. If as a country we had 1,000 new cases per day and 30 deaths per day, as opposed to 45 to 50 to 60,000 new cases a day and 1,000 deaths per day, we'd have football and a whole lot of other things. So maybe instead of having a letter and a petition to say, let us play while people are getting sick and dying, how about a petition to the White House and to all 50 governors to say a mask mandate, a lockdown for a few weeks, and everybody gets that saliva direct test for free?
Raj says, Chappie, don't dive too deep into the corona scare. A lot of it is just propaganda around election time. And Tim on Facebook says, my buddy was in Minnesota and he said nobody was wearing masks and lots of baseball games going on and people out and about. No masks, no distancing.
Meanwhile, in Korea, they've had less than 500 total cases. South Korea. Well, whatever.
All right, let's go to, you ready to turn the page?
Yes, let's turn the page to the 4th chapter.
Okay, and that gets us to college basketball and the potential for a bubble in college basketball. Mike Krzyzewski was on ESPN today. So was John Calipari, the Duke and Kentucky head coaches, and both of them, Coach K was talking about they just have to have an NCAA tournament. I don't have the number in front of me. $327 million, he said they lost last year. That's how much they would lose again this year. It just can't happen. So they're going to play college basketball. They're going to find a way to do it. And John Calipari was talking about a bubble. Even in the non-conference, he was talking about, how they play some of those non-conference tournaments where you get
Alaska,
Michigan State too.
shootout.
Right.
Yeah.
He was saying if you make those into pods and the bubbles and you just have a round robin where you're playing all of those, well, you can get some games in there as well. But when you just start thinking about an NCAA tournament and a pod situation, they would have to stay in that thing for a month. Could they do it? Potentially. I think they might. And I think they might expand the tournament. They got 64 teams. Maybe they would go to, 128 there. So then you're really thinking about, hey, so somebody in the bubble actually wouldn't be left on the bubble. You'd get all of those teams in there, and you'd feel like you'd get, everybody a real shot.
So they're just talking about a college basketball bubble specifically for the March Madness tournament, not for the whole season?
Well, they didn't go into it. Calipari, I was reading what Calipari, I didn't see the interview, so I was reading just some of his quotes there. And actually, he wasn't really clear. He talked about a pod where you'd play like the Great Alaskan Shootout, and he mentioned, Duke and Michigan State and his team. But then he mentioned, does his son play at Detroit? I didn't know that. He mentioned it. I didn't even know. I didn't know that. I didn't either. So, but when he mentioned that his son played at Detroit, that surprised me. But then he was making it sound like some other teams would be in there and you could get some buy games and they could get some money for it. That didn't make any sense, but he is talking about a bubble that they would play in a non-conference, and then the NCAA tournament, they are talking about that as well.
You would need like 3 bubbles because you'd need like a Great Alaska Shootout and a Hawaii tip-off and a Bermuda Shootout bubble so that all these teams could have their non-conference games. Then you'd have to have another bubble for conference games, and then you'd have to have another bubble for the NCAA tournament and maybe the NIT tournament. That is absolutely ridiculous. You think about how much money, the millions and billions of dollars that the NBA is spending just for 22 teams to be in a bubble, and then you want to expand that. Let's just look at the Big Ten. 14 different schools, 11 different states, and then you're going to have everybody go to, whether it's Detroit, Indy, Chicago, wherever, for 2-3 months straight so they can play conference basketball games.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to do that
for free.
I think it's going to come back to what you said right there, and that saliva test. If you knew that you had that saliva test and you're coming up to a weekend and you're going to play some games there, the 2 day could you bubble a team for 2 days prior to a game? Test them on a Friday, test them on a Saturday, and then
they should
they're
be
playing
doing
that day. Yeah, so you could get some games in there. I agree. The amount of money, and I know how much they stand to make, but you just start thinking about, well, are they going to be able to play conference games? Are they going to be able to actually play? They've got to play so many games.
It's a 20-game season. So you'd have to have these people from 14 different schools in 11 states just in the Big Ten all gather in one location, let's say Chicago, and they'd all have to be in these hotels. They'd have to go to these games or these arenas that are close to play their games. They would have to not be around the rest of the student population. They'd still have to do their classwork remotely and all that. They'd have to pass their classes. It would be just such a disaster. You have folks like a Lou Will trying to sneak out and go to a strip club. You'll have somebody like a Zach Clevenger or a Mike Clevenger going out to have dinner with a friend or something like that, and then everybody's going to criticize someone like that, like what happened with the Indians pitchers. And then to all the money to monitor it just so that they can get money from FS1, BTN, CBS, and ESPN to not share with the players. While people are going around getting sick and dying outside of these bubbles, it's just not feasible. Even with the saliva direct test, no bubble.
Doesn't sound like it right now. Tim saying if you can't have an audience, won't they still be losing money? The chap just said all those television contracts. It just shows you how much money. Like Michigan State, I was looking today. They're like, well, they stand to lose $80 million. If they don't have football. These schools make just with football. You're thinking like Michigan State, $80 million. Think how much money they make every year. Yeah, they're losing $80 million this year, but all of these other years, man, just where is all that $80 million going?
Yeah, well, a lot of it is going right back to football, so they can make even more money the next year, or to basketball.
Well, it goes back to football, and they'll tell you it goes to pay for all those charter flights for the field hockey team.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's part of it too. So it does have to feed back. But man, they make so much cash, and we're seeing that right now. But yeah, the bubble, that's going to be tough to be able to do in college basketball. Before we get to that fifth chapter, we get to our major wager. And about a month ago, Chap was like, hey, we got to start wagering on the show. And we started doing it. And I'm on a roll. That's what it's coming down to, Chap.
Yes, you are on a roll. And if you follow me on Twitter at BChap Sports, you can see what I tweet out from my major wager each day. And I think I've done better on the major wagers that have not been a part of the show than I have for the ones that have been part of the show. So...
yeah, it all depends really what you're doing when you go to the window. And I know you went and bet last week, and I told you I hope you're not betting on any parlays. And, of course, you said you were. So I know you didn't hit on that one. But
no,
I took your advice today, and I bet a game earlier that I liked. But I told you about it so I wouldn't sit here and say, hey, I took the Rockets. They were getting 1.5 even though they didn't have Westbrook. I liked them to win in their first game. And you know what? They jumped up by 10. They're up 16 at the half. They ended up blowing out OKC. The interesting part about this, though, is when I sent Chapman the text that because I'm up 123 after all of these weeks, betting 25 here, 50 there. I said, just give me 25 on the Rockets. And he said, oh, I wouldn't bet that one. So then I texted back, and I'm like, give me 50. Since Chap didn't like them, I doubled up on my bet. And so I ended up winning 50.
And just to be clear, I didn't say that it was a bad bet. I just said that I wouldn't do it because I just thought that it could go either way. Obviously, with it being a blowout, your confidence in that game was well put. So kudos to you on that major wager. For me, I took the Phillies minus 1.5 against the Red Sox. It was plus 105. Boston has one of the worst pitching staffs in baseball. They've lost 8 in a row. The Red Sox, they're right now in the same category as the Pirates and Tigers, where you just pretty much pick them to lose every game. And although I don't know that I would pick, I think that, with Mize and Skubal, even though Skubal was terrible tonight, they're certainly wild cards right now. But right now, the Red Sox, Pirates, Tigers, you don't pick them to win right now. Zach Godley, who was Boston's starter today, came into the day with an ERA over 8 and a whip over 2. Meanwhile, the Phillies started Zach Eflin, who's been decent in 2 starts. The Phillies have also won 3 in a row, so I thought it was good value. And right now, the bet's not looking all that great. It is the bottom of the 5th inning. Boston is up 3-2. They've got a man on first and third with 1 out. So I need Philly to win by 2 for that to come true. And it's not looking good right now, but they're only at the midway point of that game. So there's still time for Philly to trash a team that is trash.
All right. Good luck to you.
Yeah,
All right.
well,
Well,
you
is
don't
that the
need
end
luck
of the
because you already
show?
won.
Everybody come back on Thursday. Have a great time.
No,
Thanks
no,
for
no,
watching.
no, 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 not so fast. Not so fast. It's time for one of my favorites and one of your favorites, whether you want to admit it or not. It is time for man, woman, or child. And for those of you who are new to the fifth chapter, don't know how man, woman, or child is played, now get that down. We all know that Penn State is great. The way it works is I read a headline to Dennis. I've got 5 headlines. I read the headline to Dennis. I might give him a couple of extra details about the story. And then he has to guess if the main character in that story is a man, a woman, or a child. And a child is classified as either a male or a female under the age of 18.
That's the
So,
hard part.
yeah, that is the hard part. It could be a 17-year-old, could be an 11-year-old. And I also want to say that with this edition of Man, Woman, or Child, it is going to be Bear Edition. Bear Edition of Man, Woman, or Child. Are you ready for the first headline?
Bear. Okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
First headline: individual hailed for nerves of steel after taking selfie with bear that sneaked up on him or her. Individual hailed for nerves of steel after taking selfie with bear that sneaked up on him or her. Stories said that it was a black bear. It happened in Mexico when a bear approached a group of hikers and started sniffing one of the hikers in the crotch, got on its hind legs and sniffed the hiker's hair. And then while the bear was sniffing the hiker's hair, the hiker took out the phone, his or her phone, and snapped a selfie while others were recording the incident on video. The bear did not attack him or her. Was that hiker who took a selfie with a wild black bear a man, a woman, or a child?
Well, I was thinking man with the nerves of steel. So I was thinking, would a woman really have the nerves of steel to try to take a selfie of a bear out? Not so much the nerves, but kind of like the stupidity. It felt like a man. But then when you said that the bear was sniffing the hair, and whose hair do you want to smell if you're a bear? And that's going to be a woman. So now it's going to come down child under 18. Are they really out there hiking? It could happen, but you know what? That sounds like a 25-year-old woman to me with some nice smelling hair. I'm going to go woman. Final answer.
That's your final answer. And Dennis, I will say this. We do have a picture of the incident, and I will put it up there on the screen so everybody can see. And there is the bear right there on top of the woman as she has the phone in her hand taking the picture. And that is a woman. It is an adult. I thought we had video of it, but it looks like we don't have video of the incident. But yes, it is indeed a woman. So Dennis, you are 1 for 1 in Bear Edition of Man, Woman, or Child. Not bad. All right, second headline. Individual stalked by huge brown bear reacts perfectly. Individual stalked by huge brown bear reacts perfectly. Story says a hike in the mountains of northern Italy turned terrifying when a huge brown bear suddenly began stalking an individual. Luckily, the individual had recently studied how to act when confronting a bear and calmly, almost nonchalantly, walked away to safety. Was the individual who calmly walked away from a huge brown bear who was stalking him or her a man, a woman, or a child?
Well, I think this one's going to be a man, but it could be a child. Could have been a 17-year-old that had read. You know what? Yeah, that's what I think. I think a child, 17-year-old, read something, heard about it in class,
gummy bears. So, Dennis, I know you don't like this game, but you were a perfect 3 for 3 today. I got 2 headlines I didn't even get to. So, congratulations. It is now, I would have to say, your favorite game.
Thank you. I like it a lot better. It's much more fun when you win.
Yeah, you're a sore loser.
No. Coming up on Thursday's show, did Casey Mize fare better than Tarik Skubal? We'll get to that in depth.
Doesn't take much.
No, it's not going to. If he gets the first batter out, he'll be doing well. He'll be on his way. I'd get Mize's parents going in the first inning if I was FSD. For Chapman, I'm Dennis Fithian. Thanks for watching. Bye.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, but people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth chapter.